members of the Management Committee, this meeting is now called to order. For those around the table, please turn on your microphone when speaking. For those participating via Zoom, please state your name when making a comment or asking a question. The MAG public comment process allows members of the public to comment on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction. If you would like to comment at today's meeting, please complete the request to speak form. MAG staff can assist with any questions you may have. If you parked in the garage, a parking validation stamp is available on the information table in the hallway. If you purchase a transit ticket to come to the meeting, please see staff for a ticket. Hearing assisted devices are available from MAG staff. We will now begin the meeting with a roll call of all members. Staff, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the Management Committee, I will go down the list of alphabetically. Please unmute and indicate if you are present. Patrick Banjer.
Present.
Thank you. Jeffrey Barton.
Here.
Thank you. Ben Bitter.
Here.
Thank you. Jean Blackman.
Here.
Thank you. Chair Brady.
Here.
Thank you. Andrew Ching.
Present.
Thank you. Tracy Stevens is proxy for Ron Corbin.
Present.
Thank you. Doug Sandstrom as proxy for Dan Cotterman.
Present.
Thank you. Henry Darwin.
Present.
Thank you. Crystal Dykes.
Present.
Thank you. Stephen Erno.
Here.
Thank you. Bruce Gardner.
Here.
Thank you. Rachel Goodwin.
Here.
Thank you. Rosa Inchasti.
Present.
Thank you. Michael Preston as proxy for Suzanne Jones. Jeff Kalaga.
Here.
Thank you. Leo Liu.
Here.
Thank you. Reyes Medrano.
Here.
Thank you. Alexis Tamron Kinsey as proxy for Jessica Mefford Miller.
Present.
Thank you. Jennifer Jack.
Present.
Thank you. Grady Miller.
Here.
Thank you. Gary Neese. Kevin Phelps.
Here.
Thank you. Calvin Pilcher.
Here.
Thank you. Jen Pekorski. Bryant Powell.
Here.
Thank you. Lynette Reed.
Present.
Thank you. Bill Murphy is proxy for Jim Thompson.
Here.
Thank you. Mark Sanders is proxy for Jennifer Taub.
Here.
Thank you. Catherine Valenzuela.
Here.
Thank you. Bruce Walls.
Here.
Thank you. Matthew Williams.
Present.
Thank you. Tracy Montgomery as proxy for Bob Wingenrod.
Present.
Thank you. Joshua Wright.
Here.
Thank you. Is there anyone that I missed? Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our next item is call to the audience. This is the opportunity for the public to comment on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction that are not on the agenda, informational items or items on the agenda for discussion and not for action. So we have 15 minutes provided for the call to the audience. And we have 5 requests to speak. And so we will ask that each participant not exceed 3 minutes. So in the order in which I have received the names, we'll invite you to come forward. First speaker will be Veronica Cochran.
Thank you. I would like to address the issue of sustainability. And I would love to see support of the sustainability, but in a way that is truly sustainable. I come from a very poor background. My mother the only way my mom can make money was to sell eggs and milk. So I would have few eggs in an entire year. Of course, we don't want us to come back to that. place in our society, hopefully. But I appreciate food. And I would like to see more support for composting because in Tempe, they have a composting solution. And this is the way to teach people to appreciate food, to not just throw it into the garbage, but not just paper and other items, but especially foods. And so I believe this is something that we will learn to get in touch with Mother Nature, because that's what we need to do in order to truly be sustainable. Because in my experience, electric cars are really not sustainable. If you look at the mathematics and you do the math, and you will realize they are really expensive because of the mining, because of the batteries. In France, they have a problem with electric cars who are batteries are bad old. So basically, we need to truly, honestly look through sustainability from a different eye than maybe Klaus Schwab and World Economic Forum is imposing to us, to eat bugs and stuff like that. There are better solution. Let's start with the family and education of our children to appreciate food, because I know I did not have it, and it's hard to comprehend. A lot of children are hungry even today in America. Another, I don't know, timer. Yeah, another thing I would like to address is air quality. We have been told this new idea of climate change, which truly climate change is happening forever. And I happen to study, or actually know someone who did study with people who knew about climate change that were no longer connected to academic programs, and they're free to speak the truth about climate change. So truly climate change is happening on Mars, it's happening on all the other planets. It's nothing to do with evil humans. So we need to understand that we need to be honest in our hearts that our planet is precious, that we have actually, our planet is water planet. We have an abundance of water underground, and for how to take it out from there. So there are so many lies that they were told to us that
Thank you for your,
oh
thank you for your
oh
comments.
okay that
That's
oh
your 3 minutes.
so that we would like to just you know, would like to see our society go in the right direction, which is follow our heart and our God in us and goodness in us. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Roger Pickerel.
Thank you for allowing me the opportunity. I'm a Vietnam veteran, and I have a few things I'd like to share. But first, I'd like to share some words that was out of the Gettysburg Address with our President Abraham Lincoln. And there's a point and purpose with this, if you'll indulge. It reads, "Fondly do we hope, fervently do we pray, that this mighty scourge of war may speedily pass away. Yet if God wills that it continue until all the wealth piled by the bondsman's 250 years of unrequited toil shall be sunk, and until every drop of blood drawn by the lash shall be paid by another drawn with the sword. As was said 3,000 years ago, so it still must be said, the judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether, with malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right, as God gives us to see the right. Let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds, to care for him who shall have home borne the battle, and for his widow and his orphan, to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace among ourselves and with all nations." This is Mag, and I want to thank you for what you're doing for us as a group. But one of the things I understand that you are for public safety. And one of the things that we all popularly want to be able to see is things that we can be doing to be able to help with that public safety. And that is in which we'd like to be able to see safety at the border. We don't know what medical history these people have. We don't even know anything of their background. We haven't vetted them. We need to do that for our children. And we need to do for those children that are coming across as well. When we look across the table to our families each and every day, we have to be able to have a conscious mind, clear mind, moral mind, and be able to, as in this nation, we devote for our values. So one of the things I want to be able to engage with you people today is to be able to say, what is it that I'm going to answer the questions of my children, my wife, my daughters, my sons, and just to be able to say, I'm doing the best I can, and I want to make change because I hear the word of the public wanting to talk, and we the people. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for what you do. I just want you to look in the mirror and say, I understand. I hear you loud and clear. God bless you. God keep you, and have a blessed day.
Thank you. That's, let's see, Diane Barker is our next speaker.
Good afternoon, Chris Brady, Chair, and the Transportation Committee. All of you are city managers or maybe head of the Native Tribal. I believe that multimodal, it feels good, and I got my bus ticket. Several years ago, Meg did establish a mobility statement that if you came here by car, you could get your parking validated. And if you came by bus or rail or whatever, you could get a bus ticket. And I don't need the full one. So because I did reach, my senior year. And so when I see that somebody really is in need, maybe arguing with the bus driver, which you're not supposed to do. If you don't like what the bus driver's doing, report them, but never get into an argument. Safety is the number one thing in transportation, and you don't get the driver upset. Okay, so what I want to say is I came from the Board of Supervisors, and I have some friends here that wanted to share in the public participation. That is the backbone, the fundamental that I was taught back in Ohio, that you participate with your government. And I do believe, even sometimes it's a slow process, there can be some positive exchanges in a kind of dialogue like this, rather than an attitude that a lot of people have today. Government, it stinks. Maybe it does in some areas, but unless you open some doors and have some dialogue, lots of times it's going to stay that way. And so I still haven't figured out what the agreement is. I'll have to, maybe have a side chat with Jeff Barton on the MOU that was passed today from the Board of Supervisors and City of Phoenix, Mason, Chandler. Well, it's a bigger group than this. It has to do with EPA and air quality. So I kind of wonder, today is a high pollution day. And the thing is that, you've been preached this. Our director here, Ed Zerker, even talks about, air quality. We're in, moderate to serious for ozone. And I just had a gal tell me ozone. She says, there's nothing that's coming from here. It's all coming from there. I said, what do you mean? Chemtrails. Everybody say, or Bakersfield is very polluted, but it's not a responsibility that we're polluting our area. How do we get ozone? And it does affect lungs over a longer period of time, and coughing, asthma, is we get it from emissions with sunlight. It's today.
Diane. All right, that's the list I have for call to the audience. We have a few more for the consent agenda. However, staff, have we received any online written comments for call to the audience?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have not received any written comments for the call to the audience or any other agenda item today.
Oh, thank you. All right, item 4, there are no informational items on the agenda for today's meeting. The next item is approval of the consent agenda. So we'll go to the approval of the consent agenda. Items 5A through 5P are on the consent agenda. Does any member of the committee have questions or request presentation on any of these items? Hearing none prior to the approval of consent agenda, there is an opportunity for members of the public to comment on any item on the consent. I have two comments for the consent agenda. Diane, will you come back for us? Come back, please.
Thank you again, Chairman Brady. On the minutes, and I will say this and like to give a confidence to our other speakers that Meg has very good minutes that recap, I found, of what's actually been said here. And sometimes it's kind of touchy, but they say it. So, but what I wanted to say, just in these minutes here that's on the consent agenda, they're talking about me supporting travel reduction program. I know that it got to be a necessary, and what it is that particularly the corporations, have goals and a plan to achieve, what they say, travel reduction. Basically, I'm not for travel reduction. I'm for movement, for people getting out, enjoying, participating, being visible, loving, praying, in which we certainly need a lot of today. And so it's the choice. It's the choice how you get around. And it starts with the individual. And you know what you've done. You know what your habits are. And we do know that this society basically is single occupancy vehicle. I'm not here to deride you of that, but what it is I believe, because I found some trips that are faster, better, they're healthier for me than being in a closed single occupancy vehicle. So that's one reason why I believe in multimodal, and that's why I'm not for travel reduction. Maybe I like to have you change the wording of that. It's your choices. And you know something? I said, because kids are affected by pollution a whole lot, and elderly. I hate to put myself in that category, but I'm out there sucking it up, doing what you tell us to do, multimodal transportation. But the thing about it is, I said, well, maybe the people do it for their kids. They would, ride share, basically walk or bicycle or change it. And some lady says, well, some people don't like their kids. Oh, I said, well, let's do it for the country. Let's take a goal and participate in it. I hear these people say, hey, I serve this country. Here's the flag. Well, serve it and make it livable.
Thanks, Diane. All right. Is there a motion to approve consent items 5A through 5P?
So moved.
Second. All right, we have a motion from Brady Miller and a second from Mr. Barton. We will have those participating in the meeting online take part in a voice vote by turning on their cameras and unmuting their audio. We need to see the faces of everyone to participate in the voice vote. For those who cannot or do not want to turn on their cameras, staff will conduct a roll call vote. Staff will only call on virtual participants who did not turn on their cameras. Members, please leave your cameras on until after the roll call vote so that staff can count the people's names whose cameras are not on.
Mr. Chair, I think we just need to check to make sure we have
I
one
apologize.
more speaker, I
apologize.
think.
Yep,
Okay.
I just went right past it. Okay, we haven't taken a vote. Everybody, hang on. My apologies. Leslie Shepard, sorry, I apologize. Thank you. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. This is like night and day from going across the street to the Board of Supervisors. You guys are like nice and courteous and you act like you're paying attention. It's like a whole new world. The thing I'm going to appeal to you for is I don't have a problem with people wanting to go with electric. I mean, it's not really sustainable, but I don't think that we should shortchange people from do what they want. I think the thing that I'm more concerned about is that I'm hearing it because we go to the Board of Supervisors often. This is my first time here. Diane comes here a lot, so I thought I'd come over and check this out. And what my concern is that they're talking about shutting down gas cars. And that's a problem I have. I don't care about adding more buses or the trams. That's a good thing. We shouldn't do it in lieu of getting rid of vehicles that are ran by gas because they're very expensive. And as you can see, we have homeless coming out of our ears right now. And I don't see it getting any better anytime soon. Unfortunately, somebody did allude to what's going on at the border. And we know that that's not good. I'm not saying that that's completely what's contributing to homelessness, but we definitely have a lot of people here. We don't even know what's going on with that. And we're helping them out. So the reason I'm mentioning it is I'm just asking you guys do have a very important role. And I do know the World Economic Forum does want to be involved in the choices that you're making, whether you know it or not. I'm going to assume everybody here has a good heart and they're not trying to do something to accommodate themselves, to maybe line their pockets. I don't see that with you guys. I wouldn't say I feel the same way about the Board of Supervisors because I see how they are so aggressive and rough. It was shocking today. If we put it on video, you guys would literally think that you're in a communist country. But I really just want to appeal to you guys when you make your decisions. It shouldn't be in lieu of gas vehicles to have these other things. We can do them together. And I do know that the batteries do have dangers to them. And I do know that, unfortunately, and you may not know it, but there's child labor involved in many countries so that we can have electric cars. And I don't think that you guys really want that also. So I'm just going to ask you to really check into things before you make your votes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. I think I've got everybody's signed up. I apologize for that. All right. So we have a motion from Grady Miller, a second from Mr. Barton to approve the consent item 5A through 5P. Do we have the video on? Everybody that's getting ready to vote, turn on your cameras. Thank you. Sorry about that, to expose you for so long there. Okay. Staff will now do, oh wait, so here we go. Can I have a voice vote of those in the room and those online? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say nay. Members, please leave your cameras on. Staff, can you take a roll call of the members participating virtually who did not turn on their camera?
Members, all cameras are on and the motion passes.
Oh, well done, everybody. That was nice. Okay. All right. We'll now proceed. Item 6. All right. This item 6 is a report on the 2024 regional point in time count. This item is on the agenda for information and discussion. Brian Gruters, Regional Homeless Program Manager, will present the update. Brian?
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. As mentioned, here to present on the numbers from the 2024 point in time count. MAG, as you'll know, coordinates that count across the region. We enlist folks from around the region from your jurisdictions to help pull that count together. So let me open by saying thank you to all of the folks who helped coordinate that, to the member agencies who support, the volunteers who went out, the paid staff, and then also the folks who took time to talk to us, people living on the street. We appreciate everybody's time and effort. Wanted to highlight real quick, this is going to feel a little in the weeds, but I think it's important to mention just up front, we did some quick changes to our methodology this year. When we go out and do the point in time count, the goal is to go count folks, obviously. We do that a bunch of different ways, but the main distinction to look at is whether you observe somebody or you interview them, right? It's the difference between seeing someone sitting on a bus bench and just sort of saying, counted that guy, versus having a conversation and finding out their name and their date of birth and demographic information. And obviously the latter gives you a lot more information. So the goal is always to get that number up. We In order to do that, in order to have a higher percentage of interviews versus observations, we shortened the questionnaire. Heard feedback from the people who do the count that it was too long, and people got tired of doing it. They left in the middle of it, so we reduced it to kind of the bare minimum, the required questions that we had to answer. We got rid of paper surveys almost entirely using a mobile app that MAG staff coordinate, set up, arrange the GIS for, and we're thankful to our internal staff for helping to sort that out. And then lastly, we moved to an online training platform to really standardize how people go about the count. Happy to report that you'll see on the far right, 46%. This year, 39% last year, which just means that we increased our percentage of interviews. That means better data, largely, I think, as a result of some of those changes. So we hope to see that trend continue next year as well. And the better the data, the more valuable this count is to the region. Quick summary of what we're going to cover going forward. You'll see, and we'll go over some of the numbers. We had a shift from folks living unsheltered, that is on the street, in parks, in cars, river bottoms, et cetera, to shelter. We highlight that because it's a good thing to get people off the street. So happy to report on that. We'll go into that in a little more detail in a second. We saw further kind of evidence of overrepresentation of communities of color, including Black, African American, and African, and then also American Indian, Alaska Native in our system, which just means that there are more people in the homeless system than there are in the general population. That's been a concern, continues to be a concern, and we continue looking at ways to address that. Lastly, in here, you'll see some reference to variations in the different subpopulations that experience homelessness. So, for example, families, veterans, youth, and so forth. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So speaking of numbers, on the far right, top of the column, you'll see this year's number, 9,435. Basically, I think the key takeaway from this slide is that number, the trend line is still a lot higher than we want it to be. So we don't focus too much on year-to-year counts. There are variations in the way that the counts happen and so forth. But what we do look at is time trends, and still 50% above where we were in 2018. So that just tells us that we have a lot of work left to do. Nevertheless, these numbers I think are encouraging. So in the middle, you'll see that the unsheltered count, as referenced before, that was reduced this year by 17%. That's a big enough number that we pay attention to it. Concurrently, you saw an increase in the number of people staying in shelter that night. So we see that as a shift from street into shelter. Now, this is one night, one point in time, but it is encouraging to see that shift at all. And so we celebrate that as a success. I think it represents a lot of good work throughout the community. It's good work that's been done. There's a lot of work left to do. Next step is to get folks from shelter and into housing. But, celebrate successes. As alluded before, we saw some shifts in demographic data. So primarily focusing on communities of color that are overrepresented in the system. That's the main takeaway here. In terms of subpopulations, small increase in the number of folks who are comprising families experiencing homelessness. Now, I'll point out, we're talking about the difference between 30 people, give or take, from year to year. So it's not like huge numbers we're talking about, but still trends that we pay attention to. With youth, we saw a very small decrease this year. In terms of veterans, relatively significant decrease of 13%. Again, that's, single digit numbers, or double digit numbers, but it's still encouraging because there's a lot of good work going into this. We know that there's heavy emphasis on this population throughout the region. Similarly, important to look at the chronic homelessness count, 12% increase over last year. And by the way, I meant to say the different lines in each of these squares, these are unsheltered versus sheltered counts. And then the bold line that you see is the total count. Chronic homelessness is, generally speaking, is folks who've been homeless for a year or so at a stretch. That number continues to go up as long as we don't have housing to provide for folks who need it. So, you know, if you're staying in a shelter, that's good, but you can still be considered chronically homeless at that point. Some additional population information that we pay attention to. So folks who are experiencing any kind of mental health issue, folks with substance use issues, folks living with HIV/AIDS, and then folks fleeing domestic violence. The main number that jumped off the page here was the HIV/AIDS. We did reference that after presenting this to regional council. We got some questions about why that number looks as high as it does. What we found is, I mean, I think it's important to say that self-reported data as collected in the point in time count is not generally the best way to collect data in this on public health planning. Our conversation with the county underscored that. Talking to them, they're really seeing kind of a flat line. Every year they see those numbers. They'll see 500 to 600 new cases of people living with HIV/AIDS. And it hasn't changed considerably in the last 6 years, other than a small blip with COVID-19 pandemic restrictions. So all to say, I would encourage you not to be alarmed by that number. It's according to the county, it's not a huge concern this year. So referring back to the slide from before, just wanted to underscore shift from unsheltered to sheltered. We consider that a win for the region. Excited to report on that. Continue to see overrepresentation of communities of color, and we need to do additional work to understand that and to address it. And then some variations in the subpopulation counts that we'll continue to pay attention to. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Thanks, Brian. Ed, did you want to have anything to say on that? Okay. Any questions, comments? I suspect the sheltering numbers going up may have something to do with the conditions of the weather that day.
You know, what we've been saying, we've gotten that question a few times. It was raining cats and dogs. We were all out in it. What I've been saying is, you know, if you don't have a shelter, no one can go inside it. So we're happy to report that the shelter development effort has produced results.
Good.
And I think, Mr. Chair, it also, the amount of money that's been invested in the region by the cities, the county, and shelter is reflected
That's
there.
good.
So in some ways, that is a good part of the story.
Oh, yes.
So, just a quick question on that. On the slide that you had with we had HIV and all that. So were all those categories self-reported? In other words, mental health, everything is self-reported.
Chair, committee members, that is in fact the case. So with the point in time count, and again, this is really only the folks that you're able to interview. So 46% of the people you talk to, you may collect that data, and that'll tell you a little bit about how reliable it is.
Right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for the report. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. We'll now move to item number 7, an overview of transportation safety in the MAG region. This item is on the agenda for information and discussion. John Boland, Chief Transportation Officer, will introduce this item. John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the MAG Management Committee. Happy to be here today to present on transportation safety in the MAG region. Over the past year, we've presented on a number of transportation topics. These range from updates on some of our planning and study activities to project selection to program management. And while certainly transportation safety has been a component of all of that, we have not had a standalone conversation about transportation safety in this region for a little while here. So we wanted to initiate that conversation today. And to put it plainly, we have a significant transportation safety issue here in the region. Shortly, I'll turn it over to Margaret Herrera, our Transportation Safety Program Manager, to walk through some of the numbers and provide a high-level overview. But we see this as just the start of the conversation. We see this as needing to be ongoing discussions continuing through the fall. The good news, and part of the reason why we're here today at this point in time, is that we do have an opportunity before us. As we initiate development for Proposition 479, we truly do have the opportunity to start to make impacts on some of the trends that we see that are concerning. We have the opportunity to prioritize safety if we choose to do so. Really, we wanted to leverage this opportunity, initiate the policy conversations, and really get you familiar with the challenges that we have. So with that, I will turn it over to Margaret to go through some of the numbers.
Thank you, John. Mr. Chair, members of the MAG Management Committee, I'm pleased to be here today for the opportunity to kick off this first in a series of important discussions about transportation safety in the MAG region. So a quick overview of today's presentation begins with safety planning and funding. We'll then look at some safety data and trends with the goal really, or the hope of inspiring safety as a priority. So with that, let's get started on some planning and funding, safety planning and funding. Starting with Momentum is the high-level living document in setting the vision for the region. Within Momentum's 6 goals, safety is explicitly identified to provide safety and security for pedestrians, bicyclists, and drivers. So the mechanism for funding programs projects reflecting those goals, the RSTIP serves as the basis for funding through Prop 479 with the specific set aside for safety. Within the RSTIP, the region has an opportunity, as John mentioned, to prioritize safety in all other programs. So everyone's favorite slide here, you can see to demonstrate the resources for prioritizing safety. You will note here the 200 million set aside specifically for safety that we noted earlier. But now we can focus on the freeway and arterial investments, as well as those that support transit. In addition to all other program investments, and we can see that safety is really embedded in all of these. So within Momentum and the RSTIP as the umbrella, the Strategic Transportation Safety Plan, which was accepted by Regional Council in 2021, was developed concurrently with Momentum and was closely coordinated with that effort. This update represented a real shift in the focus and emphasizing the impact on people really in this region as we go through and identify planning efforts. The mission statement reflects the common values for a shared responsibility to ensure our safety as well as the safety of others, and the strategies identified and implemented. But more can be done to fully realize this mission. So now let's look at some safety trends. First, I'd like to note that the data that you're going to see reflected here is for the entire MAG region, which means it's not just the urban areas, it's also the rural areas, and it's for the 10-year period of 2013 through 2022. So taking the pulse of the region's safety performance, we found that every year in the past 10 years, 530 people have died and 38,000 were injured. This means that every day, 4 people died and 104 were injured. Putting in today's terms, 1 person will die every 12 hours, and by the time we leave here today, 4 more will be injured. For more perspective, the MAG region exhibits 15 fatalities and 800 injuries per 100,000 people. In addition, the societal cost to all of us in the MAG region is $6 billion. Taking a closer look at what some of those costs include, we reference a recent Arizona Central article that reported that the Phoenix metro area households insurance pays $226 more than the national average, which is seen as 26% increase from 2023 to 2024. So looking at the trends for the most recent 10 years, we see that the total fatalities in the region increased 59% from 2013 to 2020. For pedestrian fatalities, you can see a steady increase, noting a decrease to near 2015 levels in pedestrian fatalities in 2019. And I note this just to state that it's really important to review a 10-year period and not just focus on a 1-year decline or increase, right? 2022 pedestrian fatalities are 110% higher than the 2013. Similarly, bicyclist fatalities have increased 75% over the 10-year period. So you may ask how we compare to other regions. FHWA provides this comparison with their 2021 update to their focus of safety. This effort identified focus states and regions, and out of 398 metropolitan planning organizations reviewed, the MAG region was 4th worst in intersection fatalities. Similarly, 4th worst in pedestrian fatalities, and 10th worst in bicyclist fatalities. So given the review of safety planning and equipped with this regional safety data, I'll hand it back over to the podium over to John to provide additional context to this discussion. Thank you.
So what does this conversation look like moving forward? Really, the intent today is to pose a policy question. And that policy question is whether or not we want to prioritize safety. And if we do prioritize safety, what does that look like? First, we're going to need to understand the issues. We presented the data at a very high level today, but as we dive deeper into the data itself, candidly, some of that data is concerning. It's troubling, but we need to have authentic conversations about the data and what the problems are. And this includes going into specific areas at the agency level, corridor level, roadway level. We also need to establish performance targets. We need to decide where the region wants to go, and we need to establish a commitment to get there. A lot of that commitment is going to be investment, consciously making decisions to prioritize safety. As Margaret mentioned, as I'll touch on here shortly, we have the opportunity with the creation of a new plan to really use that to nest a lot of the policy decisions, a lot of the priorities. But at the end of the day, this involves having more direct conversations. And finally, it's going to take commitment. It's going to take commitment from all member agencies. The regional funding itself is not going to be enough to solve our safety issues. It certainly provides a unique opportunity to leverage, to help make important investments, to help change the trajectory. But the priority is going to need to be made at the agency level too, to really impact some of our statistics. So what do the next steps look like? If we do want to prioritize safety, we're going to have to continue these conversations. We anticipate a number of conversations as we get more detailed into the data, more detailed into what some of the potential solutions and investments can be. As I had mentioned, we're going to initiate work of the Strategic Transportation Safety Plan update here shortly. The policy conversations that we have will feed into that effort. And last, as we've noted at a number of meetings, we're just initiating work related to the implementation of Prop 479. And actually, we have an opportunity to fairly immediately start putting the priority of safety into practice. So we will soon be kicking off. We anticipate sometime either this fall or early next year, the Transportation Safety Action Plan. This is the regional safety plan. This is an update. And this really nests all of our policy, all of our efforts. And through this, we can identify specific performance targets and specific goals that we have. We've already initiated work on 2 of the competitive programs funded through the RSTEP. Those are the arterial rehabilitation and arterial widening programs. We feel these programs have a unique opportunity to put our money where our mouths are, so to speak, where we can start making conscious decisions to invest in safety. As we look forward, Margaret's an engineer, she can tell you all about it. It's a lot easier to design safety into roadways that haven't been built. So as we look at future roadways, as we look at building out new roadways, as we look at widening roadways, there's the perfect opportunity. Moreover, with the arterial widening program, as we come through, as we rehabilitate these roadways, we have the opportunity to make safety a focal point, and we have regional funding to be able to come through and do just that. So, Mr. Chair, this is a very brief presentation. We wanted to initiate the conversation, and as I mentioned, we are interested in your feedback, interested in your perspective. Because as we do continue these conversations, we're going to have to really dive into the data, really dive into the issues, and really understand where some of that targeted funding and improvement can be done.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Margaret. John, can you go back to the previous slide real quick? So what I thought I heard in that tenure, or no, it was a comparison of the other regions. We were like fourth worst and the intersections, right? Yeah, fourth fatalities. So but on that slide 39, what you were highlighting some arterials, but not arterial intersections. So I'm just trying to understand why you emphasize two things related to arterial, but maybe not the one thing that you identified here. So help me with that.
Great question, Mr. Chairman, members of the MAG Management Committee. So the reason we highlighted those two programs, those are the two programs that are fully federally funded through the RSTIP.
Okay.
So because we have funding available in fiscal years 26, 27, 28, we need to kickstart those. We've already initiated development. Our hope is to bring the policies and procedures through the committee this fall to do a call for projects in January. So we're merely highlighting those two programs. Those are the most immediate opportunity that we have to start prioritizing safety. Certainly, if this region commits to prioritizing safety, all the other funding that we have, we anticipate making safety a focal point of all those other opportunities, particularly the intersection.
Okay, that's real. Okay, that was just want to make sure we were
It's merely a timing issue.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you for that. All right. Any questions?
Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, hey, Chris. The last one that talks about culture, that slide that says talks to our culture. So that I would ask, why did we get in the position that we are in? What is it about our culture that got us to fourth worst? I would have never expected us to be that, because to me it does talk to who we are as a people. Everyone wants to be safer. We want to do better, but anybody knows the answer to that?
Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it over to Margaret, who can touch on some of the high level. But to underscore, this is part of what we're going to have to really dive into as we look forward. What are those driving factors and what opportunities we have? So, Margaret.
That is a really good question. And I think it's something that we have to ask ourselves. And I think it's more helpful if we think about what we can do, not just as an individual, but also as a body, as a staff, right? How can we do that? I think we should focus on how do we improve the culture than really how we got there. I think when we do start diving into those numbers, we're going to see where there might be some clues as to why that might be happening. But at this high level right now, that's not really something I can answer, unfortunately.
I would say though, Mr. Powell, to amplify a bit, I think there's one thing which is a cultural and another which is a design. So one thing is just a culture of speed. That's not just Phoenix, that's the United States. But I think our roads are particularly designed where speed is emphasized. You know, when you think about a grid with lots of straight lines, as opposed to maybe eastern cities where things wind around. So speed is a huge one. And I'm not talking about speed limits necessarily doing anything with speed limit. I'm just talking about the speed that people are driving regardless of what the speed limit is posted. The second one would be lighting. So a lot of things happen in the evenings at night. And particularly in some of our older parts of the community, the lighting standards were different 50, 60, 80 years ago when things were built. So I think as we dive into it, we'll start seeing what can we do about speed and what can we do about light will be two things. But I think your question's one, to Margaret's point, we all kind of have to ask ourselves that question. Because as I mentioned before, last month we talked about 645 people dying of heat in the county, which was too many. And here you saw last year, 720 people died in traffic in some way. So more people are dying in traffic than of heat. Do we have a similar sense of alarm about that is a question, I think, to
Thank you.
your
Yep, I
point.
appreciate it.
Being distracted too, I think is another factor. Distraction. There are a lot of distractions for drivers these days. Any other?
Okay.
Oh, yes. Jeff.
Margaret, quick question. Two of your slides you referred to our comparison of year over year growth raw numbers back to 2013.
Mhm.
How much of that, again, not to try to minimize the impact, but how much of that is reflective of the growth in population relative, so essentially per capita growth year over year? Is it relatively the same, or is that number growing primarily because the function of our population is also growing?
That's a really great question. I think that's something, again, when we get beyond kind of this high level analysis, those are things that we're going to be taking a look at. Yes.
Normalizing that would be helpful. Oh, yes, Kevin.
Well, I just want to piggyback on Ed's comments a little bit. We talked about it in West Valley Managers meeting last week, I guess it was. This culture is around the speed. I mean, it doesn't take a lot of research to see that speed impacts the vast majority of serious injuries and fatalities. And I come from a different region. I come from the Seattle area. And we were talking about this at the West Valley Managers meeting. In Washington State, I doubt if you have a single department that I can recall where every patrol vehicle is not equipped with forward and rear mounted radar. The only, out of my 400 plus officers in Glendale, the only ones we have are our traffic ops department, because there's a culture even within the police departments that there are traffic operations and enforcement, and then there's other police work that gets done. So that culture is both internal and external to the region. I lived in Seattle, but I had family down here for 20 years. Being a non-resident of Arizona, I knew that when I drove through the town of Paradise Valley, I did what? I slowed down and I didn't run through a red light. We had a similar city up in Washington State called Furcrest. You could be driving whatever speed you want anywhere else. You go into Furcrest because they had a culture of enforcement. Mm-hmm. Just like I believe Paradise Valley has a culture of enforcement. And kind of the paradox that we're going to face that as we make roads safer, it also will make it easier then to exceed and drive even faster. And we're not going to put speed bumps on Loop 101. So as we design that, and so I think we need to have in this conversation is really how do we talk about this culture? And it really, I believe it does start to a degree with enforcement. There are other things that I don't want to oversimplify this issue, but that is my observation. And Andrew, I know you're listening in here, but I know one thing I do is I never speed in your city, and I don't think you're spending hundreds of millions of dollars to have that culture in your city. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Rosa.
Thank you, John. Margaret, thank you very much. Hard message to deliver, and you can tell the entire room just took a gasp when we saw those numbers. So I know it's not an easy role that you're in. My question, I don't know if it's Margaret that you can answer this. You talked about performance targets, and are we also looking at the benchmarks of best, safest regions to help inform? Because I know benchmarks of best practices help inform performance targets. I just want to know if that's what we're looking at. Obviously, this is just early conversations, but I would rest easier to know that we're also looking not just the worst, but the best, and what are they doing different?
Sure, absolutely. And just at a high level, again, we will definitely be looking at what others are doing in that arena, but we'll also be taking a look at our specific data, right? It'll be data driven. That'll be specific to our region. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Thank you both very much. Topics just get better. Go on to number 8, air quality update. I'm sure the air is just getting cleaner by the day. Matt?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll keep it down here. And members of the committee. I do just want to highlight one thing that we think is hopeful. moving forward. On May 31st, MAG had the opportunity to host an in-person meeting with what we call the Intermountain West Metropolitan Planning Organizations. And this meeting was really convened to discuss our common ozone non-attainment area challenge and what we can do to address those challenges. So the MPOs that met included representatives from Colorado, Utah, Nevada, and Idaho. And so we have very similar non-attainment areas that are similar to us, right? Las Vegas is a moderate non-attainment area. Salt Lake City, moderate, as well as is Denver. And I think what we found in that discussion is we all have the very same similar issues. And so because of that, we can come forward with a common voice to ask for solutions and ways that we can address these challenges. So just to highlight what we've mentioned before, we all have that same challenge of our ozone concentrations have increased largely since 2018, 2019, despite all of the great reductions and local emissions that have occurred. That's true not only in our region, but in these other metropolitan areas as well. We have the common challenge of wildfires, being impacted by wildfires and being impacted by international emissions. So really the outcome of that meeting was we're going to get together, work on a common problem statement that we can then share with help for EPA and congressional delegation, where we can really get some movement on this to say, hey, we need a new baseline. We need a new understanding of ozone in the Intermountain West so that as policymakers can really feel comfortable about the decisions you have to make when we ask for you to consider control measures or when we ask for you to adopt a plan. You really need to feel comfortable that the decisions you're going to make are going to have an impact on ozone moving forward. So we're hopeful that this effort as us as a region, as we continue as a region, I know you've heard this a lot, that's really getting movement at the federal level to really address the ozone issues we have here at the West. So we're hopeful for that can, and we'll keep you updated as that moves forward. The other thing I just wanted to mention today is on ozone. If you're wondering how we're doing this year compared to prior years, it's not a great story. We've had 19 ozone exceedance days so far already for this year. And as you know, it's the fourth high day that kicks you over the standard. In comparison to last year at this time, we had about 16 days. So we're very similar to where we were in the past couple of years. We're not seeing an improvement in air quality so far. So that's my update for today. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay. Any questions for Matt? It's hard to say thank you, but I guess thank you. Thank you. All right, moving to my favorite part of the agenda. All right. Each June, the positions of chair and vice chair are elected by the management committee according to the MAG committee operating policies and procedures approved by the MAG Regional Council. The chair works with members to nominate a manager for the vice chair position, and the current vice chair is nominated for the position of chair. The positions serve, 1-year terms. So, allegedly. All right. So prior to the voting, there is an opportunity for members of the public to comment. So do we have any comments? I don't think I have.
No, we've received no.
No comments. Okay, sorry. Okay, here we go. All the way down to here. Is there a motion to elect a chair and a vice chair for the management committee?
Mr. Chair. Go ahead, Patrick. I'd like to make a motion to elect Jeff Barton as fiscal year 2025 Management Committee Chair.
Thanks, Patrick.
And as much as it pains me to say it, Kevin Phelps as Vice.
All right. Okay. So we have a motion from Mr. Manager for the chair to be Mr. Barton and vice chair, Mr. Phelps. Do we have a second?
Yes, sir.
All right. We have a second to that motion. We'll have those participating meeting online take part in the voice vote by turning on their cameras and unmuting their audio. Members, please leave your cameras on until after the roll call vote. All right. Can I have a voice vote of those in the room and those online? Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. All right. Did we have 100% or did you need, was there some others you need to do roll call with?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All the cameras were on and the motion passes.
Okay, wonderful. Good news. All right. We will now move to the executive director's report.
Just very quickly, Mr. Chair, I'll actually skip we'll go real quick. We've taken a little bit more time with some more public comment, which is fine. Just FYI, the Canadian Foreign Ministry last month announced that the Canadian consulate is opening a trade office in Phoenix, moving some resources from Los Angeles here actually, which is actually a testimony to the economic development staff in the region who have been so responsive to the Canadians that they've decided that they really need to work here. So that's really good news. You should feel good about that. Next would just draw attention to, next slide, please. It's hot. It's 110 today. The resources are available. Our partners at Maricopa County, and I want to thank County Manager Pekorski, City Manager Barton for the work they're doing together on this to make it available for the region. Please use those resources with your staff. It's on the county public health website. Next, in the area of homelessness, we learned this week that the region has received a almost $2 million grant specifically to address homeless youth. And so that's a result of the work of our human services team here at MAG. I know they've collaborated with many of the cities, but it's new resources to address a growing problem. I do want to recognize, I don't think he's here, but this was a project that we gave to a ASU intern, Matt Finley, when he first started, to see what he could do with it. And what he did with it was return us $1.7 million. And I think Matt's going to stay with us for a while. So it speaks well to him, Brian, the whole team at Human Services. Thanks, Brian. And finally, we had a press conference to talk about a very important issue, public safety issue, traffic safety issue, which is people driving with unsecured loads. We see it every day. We have a clip here, but in the interest of time, I'm not going to show it. But thanks to our communications staff, our IT staff for working. Chairman Orsborn, or TPC Chairman Orsborn spoke about it at that. The gentleman in the middle is in the white shirt is the father of a young man who died 20 years ago when just a small piece of metal fell off someone's truck and killed him instantly in driving. So it's a very serious issue. The resources of Prop 400 and Prop 479 go to fund this program. It's one of the important things that happens here as it relates to it. And last thing I'll just do is to express appreciation to Chair Brady for his 17 months of service as the chair since February of 2023. But in all seriousness, a couple of the big things I know you've lived with, the conversion of MR 911 from a MAG regional effort to the statewide effort. I know that was a heavy lift. You didn't count on it being that much time. You and Mr. Phelps, Mr. Barton, Josh from Chandler, who else? Dan from Buckeye, and then a bunch of staff part of that. I know that was a big effort, and I want to just specifically say your demeanor in those meetings, I think, is what got us across the finish line. You cut through a lot of the emotion and the past to focus on the present and the future, and it's very much recognized best. Thank you, as well as guiding us during the up and down time of the Prop 479 work through the legislature. So on behalf of the MAG staff, I just want to give you a big thank you and tell Mr. Barton, big shoes to fill. I think Jeff may have something.
We've got a parting gift.
Another
And
sandwich.
Since you quickly glossed over that section of the agenda.
Oh, yeah, I did.
Mr.
Is there a
Brady.
steak knife set?
But like Ed said, I also want to thank you for your leadership, your extended leadership. You've directed us through some very critical issues as those that Ed mentioned. So I won't belabor that. We'd be here all day. And I know how quick you are to get out of this chair, but we do have your acknowledgement of your service. So
Thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, sure. Oh, standing. Jeff.
Oh, me too. Already.
Thank you. Well, thank you for that. Obviously, no one person really leads this group. It's a bunch, it's everybody's a leader here and contributor. So it's just It's been fun. It's been an interesting experience. Thank you all for just showing up, right, and being part of these discussions. Sometimes I know it's not always convenient, but I think it's important. If nothing else, the topics are obviously very important, but I think the symbolism of everybody coming together, whether it's online or, and today's impressive. We've had this a good group. It's almost like we've recovered from COVID finally. So thank you all for just showing up, right? I think that symbolism of working together, I think that's what makes us unique, right? And let's just keep doing it. So thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Audrey, you have something to tell us? Good news about a budget or anything that maybe it's not going to impact cities, something like that?
They're giving us our money.
Yeah.
Once again, a high bar to reach. Chairman Brady, members of Management Committee, just a few things to mention briefly. New revenue forecasts have lowered the budget deficit to $1.3 billion, and we have now seen a sneak peek of exactly how the legislature intends to help close that gap. Budget sheets were released recently, and here's what we know. We've been tracking a lot of the budget development surrounding the potential for sweeps associated with one-time spending, especially in transportation. We're seeing agency reductions and fund transfers and sweeps as part of making up of that $1.3 billion deficit. One-time spending that appears to be at risk includes $49 million for the construction of Riggs Road and SR 347 overpass, on your way to the city of Maricopa. $108 million for the widening of I-10 between SR 85 and Citrus Road. We do see an apparent HERF sweep of $4 million additional to DPS. And in the total amount of capital projects coming out of transportation appears to be approximately $250 million. And of that is included $70 million in pavement preservation funding, some of the basic responsibilities, of course, and maintenance responsibilities of the system. We're continuing to evaluate, some more to come, certainly. It's part of a long process. We're waiting, and of course, on the specific budget bills that ultimately lay out these appropriations and decisions, as well as the policy aspects associated with the negotiations. We do understand that they've authorized late introduction of budget bills, which you may see as soon as this afternoon. Similarly, heading into Management Committee today, we did see a late introduction of a Senate Rules Committee agenda item for HCR, or House Continuing Resolution 2049, a strike everything bill that prohibits vehicle miles traveled for a tax or fee or for monitoring and tracking purposes. We've seen this bill in a few different iterations earlier this year. Potentially has implications on some of our air quality work, but certainly would have implications on the potential modernization of the Highway User Revenue Fund, which is an adopted policy principle of this body. So with that, Chairman Brady, that completes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
All right. Thank you. Any questions? Very good. Any requests for future agenda items? If not,
Mr. Chairman?
yes. Oh, yes. Bill.
I'd like to announce to our organization, we have a new member and I brought him along with me today. That's Greg Caton. He is our new assistant city manager.
welcome.
One of our, now we have three. So just he'll probably be filling in periodically here as well.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Very helpful. Thank you. All right. No other items from the group. We will stand adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Good news, you don't have to do anything until August.
That's good. Maybe I'll be gone.